welcome those who are here to our monthly Philadelphia chapter meeting of Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light. And I was hoping we might get a few more people. Maybe we'll have some stragglers coming in. But our program this evening is to get an update on several of the grants that Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light has received, and in particular look at, if we can, look at the activities that are going to be going on in the Philadelphia region, some in the city itself, some in the area, and find out a little bit more about what opportunities there might be for local people involved with the IPL to get involved in some of the grant work. And Kathy Hrabovsky is a staff person with IPL, and she's based in Pittsburgh and has been I think our primary grant writer, and has had some good success winning some of these grants. She'll be talking about some work that we're doing with the Department of Environmental Protection. And then I think most of you have probably met David Heayn-Menendez, who is our executive director, and he's also involved in some of the grant writing and the grant administration, obviously. So I'm not sure which of you, Kathy or David, I don't know if you all have a plan on which of you would like to go first in talking about the work that IPL is going to be doing this year and next.
I'll go ahead and share my screen, which will, where our PowerPoint presentations will pop up. And then I think David's actually going to go first and talk about the two grants that he's been responsible for achieving. And then I'll wrap up with the other one. So let me get my screen share going here. And here we go. Get this in slideshow mode.
I think it's up. Yeah.
I'm used to PowerPoint. So where's Google slideshow mode?
I'm looking for it too. I'm so not used to.
There we go. Yeah.
Got it.
Oh, that's big. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. So as Bill and Kathy said, we've kind of both tag team different grants. I think that maybe play more into our individual focus areas and areas of expertise and things like that. So Kathy, if you want to go to the next slide. These are just obviously examples of the ones that we currently have, but also can give you an idea of what the potential is for achieving grants, either that could be statewide and then with local focus, or grants that could be explicitly just for Philadelphia, for your congregation, for you to be involved with. So I keep making the pitch to a lot of people across the state of like, if there's something that you really are already involved with, you have people involved with, you have your congregation behind, then let us know. And that's what we have the grants to apply for. We just need to connect those grant monies to the important work that you're already doing or that you want to do. So this first one, I'm actually listening to a different Zoom call on my phone, is the Interfaith Power and Light, as in the national organization, achieved funding for civic engagement in 2022. And they're calling it the Faith Climate Action Voter Campaign. So it's us and 3 other states that are key legislative states key to moving forward climate legislation this year and beyond, and then also pivotal for this midterm election in particular. Obviously, we're keeping on our side of the 501c3, so this is not promoting any specific candidate or policy position per se, but rather encouraging faith voters, encouraging voters who have a propensity for voting for climate legislation and pro-climate officials and things like that. as you can see here, it's a nice chunk of change, $50,000, and it'll allow us to have local organizers like younger college or recent college graduates who can get out there more actively and organize this for us on a local level. I also am very interested in having the organizers connect to frontline communities that we might not have otherwise access to, especially language access. So I'll talk about this a little bit later, that we are doing some work in North Philly, and that particular neighborhood has a very large Spanish-speaking population. So I would love for the local organizer to be bilingual if possible. This, though, cannot only be in that community, because our deliverables on it is something like sharing 10,000 voter guides, which 10,000 voter guides across Pennsylvania is nothing. You know, it's a few hundred per a church here, a synagogue there, things like that. But getting 500 voter registrations does take a little bit more time. So essentially, at your congregations, anybody that isn't registered or wants to change their registration, things like that, that's a very easy way that you could get involved. There's also text banking, where you literally just kind of like press a button 50,000 times. And that's not the actual number, but like it's a lot of times you just press the button and it sends the message out, and that's how people send you text messages. So now you'll send them back to them. Otherwise, it's getting volunteers involved, getting congregations involved, trying to make sure that they're actually going to the polls through voter pledges and things like that. So really working within congregations as best as possible to mobilize faith voters in their communities for the purpose of voting in pro-climate individuals in the midterm election. This has the potential for being funding that we can secure multiple times in the future, and also is a proof of concept that Pennsylvania and faith voters are active enough to warrant this funding, and I would love to see it be something that we secure year after year. It's also a really, really fantastic way to have funding to be able to do this outreach, meaning all of these congregations that we don't have time or funding to speak to on a regular basis. This is the funding that gives us that to be able to do that from now on a regular basis for the rest of the year. So Kathy, next one. So this is one that I've also been working on for a good chunk of the year, is the climate action campaign, kind of also a civic engagement element, where it's targeting grass top and grassroots engagement mobilization. Grass top people would be kind of a broad category in of itself, but easily elected officials, scientists, clergy, even nurses, doctors, educators, union leaders, anybody that can have some claim of authority or position that they can speak from that positionality. At the same time, grassroots people then is what we're doing in Northeast PA, which is actually organizing and connecting people across the community to create a community, to create a movement of people who are going to continue to pursue and to continue to pressure not only the White House administration now, but in the future, but also their Congressman, Matt Cartwright. So that work is things like petitions, which I can send out after this meeting to make sure that people continue to exert pressure about climate investments, or whatever the reconciliation bill will be named that came out of Build Back Better, as well as other things like heavy vehicle rules and methane rules and Securities and Exchange Commission rules, things like that. Again, it's Philadelphia for grass tops, it's Pittsburgh for grass tops, and it's NEPA, Northeast PA, for grassroots. So for you guys in Philadelphia, if you have literally anybody who would write an op-ed, who would write a letter, send a text message, an email, sign a petition, who counts as a grass top in any way, shape, or form, that's basically what we're looking for. So what you could do easily is just let us know of people that would qualify in that way. Or if you have specific clergy or specific congregations that you think would help us get the word out about this work, please let us know as well. And we already have a fellow in Philadelphia named Maya, who's working directly with Amani quite a lot to reach out to people across Philadelphia and the greater Philadelphia area. So as you can see, that means that we have at least 2 major things that are touching in Philadelphia. And then I think maybe I have a slide later on that talks about FUMCOG and the Growing Greener education grant, but maybe Kathy can speak to that a little bit.
I'm muted, sorry. Yeah, thank you, David. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're all good.
Oh, good. Okay. So we've been very fortunate to receive several grants from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, more affectionately known as the DEP. The first one we received, we applied for back in June of last year, and we were notified in December that we received it. And this is called the Growing Greener Plus grant. It's an offshoot of the original Growing Greener grant. And in our case, we're working on helping the PA DEP meet US EPA requirements in their watershed protection program, and we're including water conservation as part of that as well. So we will be focusing on what are called restoration priority areas. And in Philadelphia, the restoration priority area that we will be working specifically on in year 1 will be the Wissahickon Creek watershed, which I think you were just mentioning earlier in the meeting, Bill and Pat. So we are fortunate to have received $140,500 over 3 years. And in year 1, as I mentioned, we'll be focusing on Wissahickon Creek in southeastern Pennsylvania. In southwestern Pennsylvania, we'll be focusing on areas in Somerset and Fayette and the Pittsburgh region. And in central PA, we'll be focusing on some areas in the State College area and the Lancaster area, both southeast Lancaster and northwest Lancaster and Chester counties. And then years 2 and 3, we will be expanding the same programs across Pennsylvania. And this grant is really focusing on environmental justice communities within these particular watersheds. And then if we have time, we will definitely be able to expand to other communities. We will also be recording the programs on our laptops as we go into these communities, or virtually if we're presenting virtually still. And then we will be providing those on our YouTube channel as well. So everybody within our organization will be able to see them, but we will be focusing on environmental justice communities in particular. Of course, in the Wissahickon Creek area, that's going to be mostly urban best management practices, but in southwestern and central PA, those will be mostly suburban and rural. So a good bit of agricultural siltation and nutrient runoff due to agricultural practices. So that is a little bit different for us, and we'll be drawing on other organizations who've already put together educational programs in that area, and some of our past board members like Eric Souter, I hope, who has a great deal of experience with stormwater and agricultural sites. Any questions on the Growing Greener Plus grant?
What's an RPA?
A restoration priority area. And those are tied to specific streams that the US EPA has designated as particularly impaired. Those are particularly damaged streams, or the wildlife riparian creatures that live in that area are particularly at risk. So we focus on those first, and then we'll move on in later years to other areas.
I had
Kathy,
a question. Sorry.
Yes.
go ahead. Go ahead, Pat.
When you were saying Wissahickon Creek in southeast Pennsylvania, I take it you're talking about the Wissahickon?
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for the pronunciation correction.
Are you going to be working with the Friends of the Wissahickon organization on all of that?
I hope to be, yes. I met their executive director on a presentation a few months ago back in the fall, and so I'm hoping to reconnect with her. Yeah.
Good.
So I know they do quite a bit of work in that area. They have a great reputation.
I was going to also mention that Uh, the Friends of the Wissahickon mostly deals with the portion of the Wissahickon that's within Philadelphia city limits. And there's another organization called Wissahickon Trails, which
Mm.
is sort of the conservation organization for more of the upper portions of the watershed, which is
Oh,
in
okay.
mostly in Montgomery County.
Is
So
that
it
an
would be,
environmental justice area, Bill?
well,
I can't check my maps right now when I'm screen sharing, but
well, I mean, there are communities that the Wissahickon drains that, I mean, it's mostly suburban and probably on average higher income, but
hmm
there are communities like Ambler and parts of Glenside, which may have some lower income households. Although
hmm
generally, I mean, it's even the Wissahickon within Philadelphia mostly flows through sort of somewhat higher income parts of the city. It's sort of the
hmm
northwest part of the city, which tends to be it's Chestnut Hill, it's Mount Airy, it's parts of Roxborough, which are not
hmm
certainly not Philadelphia's poverty areas.
That's interesting because uh, sorry, I'm going to mispronounce it again. Wissahickon, did I get it right?
Yes,
Yes.
Thank
that's exactly right.
you.
Yeah.
The Wissahickon in Philadelphia, in the city proper, looked to me like it was in an environmental justice area on the environmental justice viewer map. So maybe there are little pockets in there
Well,
that.
parts of Germantown and lower portions of Mount Airy are lower income and probably would be
Mhm,
considered environmental justice communities,
mhm,
and perhaps parts of Roxborough as well that drain
mhm,
into the Wissahickon. So
mhm.
it's yeah, it probably qualifies.
It definitely needs your help since 95% of it is supposed to be sewage.
Uh-huh. That's probably why it's a restoration priority area. There's a fabulous program here in southwestern PA. It was developed over 20 years ago called the Mile Run Watershed. Are you familiar with that program? It's
No.
become upstream Pittsburgh. They've rebranded in the last 2 years. They dealt with a terrible sewage pollution problem on 9 Mile Run right within the city limits. It's actually the run runs right below the bridge that collapsed last winter, the Fern Hollow Bridge. So it's right in there. That hollow was drain all the sewage from the uphill neighborhoods there was draining into this hollow. It was really, really horrible. So it took over 20 years, but they cleaned it up. And now, before the bridge collapsed, we had been walking our dog there. It was a paradise, really. It was just wonderful. And it was so beautiful that we actually drive specifically to go there and walk because it feels like you're not in the city at all. It's a wild area.
But with the
Well,
Any other?
Wissahickon, they have to stock it with fish if they want people to fish there because there's
Mhm.
no way for the fish from the Schuylkill River to get up the creek because of the dams down at the front of it.
Ah, I see. Interesting. Interesting.
I also wonder if it's a restoration thing because, or not restoration, but like they're trying to preserve the largest green space in Philadelphia, and even though it's not running through maybe a higher poverty area, like if you lose Fairmount Park and the Wissahickon, you lose something like 60% of the green space almost.
yeah.
So I could imagine that's part of the reason why. I also think, like you said, Bill, the runoff from upstream that comes down into the city and then what runs into the Wissahickon that becomes the Schuylkill is pretty problematic. So even if it's not low income or otherwise frontline, it might be just for the sake of preserving that thing. But I also think that, like, Lancaster has well-off communities and also not so well off, but the agricultural waste is massive.
Yeah, the one thing I bicycle and walk a lot in the Wissahickon, and the things you notice after any kind of heavy rainfall, the the silt and turbidity are very high. So there's upstream, there's a lot of uh, runoff from, and I'm not sure to what degree it's agricultural. I suspect more of it is from areas where there's development going on. So you're getting runoff off of subdivisions and shopping centers and other areas where there's development work going.
Mhm,
So you get
mhm,
a lot of that silt coming down into,
mhm,
and also it's really the city for the most part. Almost everybody is on municipal sewer systems,
mhm.
and some of those are old, so they're not perfect, but it's better than septic. Upstream in the Montgomery County area, you would have more septic, and if there's septic systems that are failing, there you'd be getting sewage that could be draining into the creek.
Mm, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Shall I move on to the next grant?
So who will be the target of the education that this grant will be doing?
The, this grant, we have not identified those groups yet.
Okay,
The next ones we have identified.
okay,
And Marcus was instrumental in helping us with that one. So the other two DEP grants that we received are particular to their environmental education grant program. And in the Southeast PA area in Philadelphia, we'll be working with BoomCog. Mark and John Regan were instrumental in becoming our partners for this education program. And David's working on a Juniata Park Academy connection as well. So we hope to be working with both of your groups in the Southeast PA area. This particular grant program advisor is very efficient and very well organized, and I anticipate we'll be starting right on time with this one in July. So the month of July will be our planning month. And I'm sorry, failed to mention, each of these grants is $20,000 each, and they're typically a one-year grant, but if we do very well, the DEP may award us the same grants for the following 2 years. So it has the potential to become an additional $20,000 in each region for years 2 and years 3. So hopefully we're going to do a great job. I know we'll do a great job. So hopefully they will then give us another $20,000 for the Philadelphia area. So we'll be looking for additional partners in Philly, and we'll be looking for additional partners in Southwest Pennsylvania. And in Southwest Pennsylvania, we'll be working with Ballfield Farm and with Garfield Community Farm. Sorry, Mark, I didn't have any FUMCOG pictures. So these photos are all from Garfield Community Farm and Ballfield Farm. So we'll be focusing very much on urban organic agriculture and energy, water, waste conservation, human health, and the benefits of urban farming and how that connects to human health, and how pollution affects communities. And all of these will be tied back to climate justice, as these will be focused on environmental justice communities as well. So we hope to build a greater understanding of why it's important for people who live in environmental justice communities to care about the environment, to really be involved in creation care. And that way we'll be building our PA IPL membership and support and benefit the people who live in these communities as much as possible. So we're really fulfilling our creation care mission through this one very much. Any questions about this one?
I'm I'm interested in where does the money come from? So the Department of Environmental Protection, is that basically a government expenditure from tax dollars?
That's the state. If I I think if I, maybe when I stop screen sharing, I'll be able to look that up specifically for you, Arthur. Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I don't recall exactly where the state of Pennsylvania is getting that money, but it is from the state of Pennsylvania, from the Department of Environmental Protection. I have to look that up. And what
I
we're
think
really going
they get some of their money from things like uh, oil and gas permitting, but then
to,
I think they also some of it is out of the general revenue fund, so it's our taxpayer money.
it's our taxpayer dollars at work. Um,
Is
and
Reggie
we
going
were,
to be funding it?
What, Pat? What was your question?
Will the funds from Reggie be funding it?
Uh,
I am not
at
sure.
this
Supposed to go to
point,
environmental organizations, aren't they?
at this point, DEP has not published their spending plan for the Reggie money. So,
To
so
work on
no,
it.
not yet, not yet.
Perhaps in the future. But in the first month of July, we'll be basically planning and community outreach and setting dates for the first 4 workshops. And then we'll be beginning with, because it doesn't correspond very well to the gardening season, we have to start with an overview of climate justice or environmental justice and what that means for a community, and waste conservation, water conservation, and energy conservation. Then we'll have several celebrations in the fall and winter so that we don't lose our participants as we go through, as we move out of good weather and gardening season. And then as spring comes along, we'll get into spring garden maintenance and planning. I'm sorry, in the fall, we're also going to have a workshop on seed collection and canning and putting up food, healthy food for the winter months. So it's all connected to the gardening season, this particular one.
Kathy, did you say that way back when we were applying that the
Mhm.
Southwest area had sort of a model of this that was successful? I don't know that it was connected to this. Was there
Uh,
something else that was in place?
Probably what I was referring to is the fact that Garfield Community Farm has an outdoor seating area that's actually covered during the sun to protect participants from sun and rain and bad weather. And they already have these urban farms in existence, so we can use them. And they both have a faith-based component to the farms, so we'll be using that as a base as well. The Open Door Church is a component of the Garfield Community Farm. You see in the lower right, you see David and one of our board members, Dee Kochirka, and then Pastor John Creasy, who's the executive director of Garfield Community Farm and pastor at the Open Door Church. So that might have been what I was referring to, Mark.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I can also speak more to Juniata Park if anybody wants to hear about that.
That'd be great.
Let me turn my camera back on. So Mark kind of knows some of this. So Juniata Park Academy is a 100% below the poverty line school in North Philadelphia that is tremendously diverse. And I have a standing relationship with the principal and the faculty there from my last nonprofit. So I decided it's a good place to go back. They also have a fairly energy efficient school because it's only 15 years old. They built it from scratch, but it is in part of the largest heat sink in the city. So the area of the city that, because it has no tree canopy and a lot of concrete and metal, is 10 to 20 degrees hotter than the surrounding communities. It also, because it's partially industrial or post-industrial, has a ton of waste, like either current pollution or just space that is horribly polluted already. And they fortunately have a green field, which sounds nice, right? To have green space in this otherwise concrete area. But the only problem is that they have no trees. They had like 10 trees until last week when I took them 25 new trees. So Mark, last week I planted 25 trees with 60 children, 20 parents, and 10 faculty members. And it was amazing. And we got dirty with our hands, and now 25 trees now live on their property, and I'll go back next week to check on them. But more importantly in that community is a garden that was established because one of their faculty members passed away a number of years ago, and their family dedicated a garden. The only problem, as Mark and a lot of us know who do plantings, is a garden or a tree that is planted without a community will not continue to be alive or planted. And that is exactly what happened to this garden. It was just weeds, all weeds. So I spoke with the principal and the one faculty member who's interested in taking it on, and we are creating a vegetable garden. So I have donated outside my house currently 50 different plants that I'm going to take down to Philly this week and leave there until we get a community to plant them, whether the school students or their families or the surrounding congregations. And there are 15 or 20 approximately congregations within a half a mile of this school, most of which are Spanish speaking or African American. And I would love help with connecting with them. I would love help bringing them into PA IPL. I think that they are an untapped resource and the epitome of the frontline communities that climate justice and our mission direct us to work with. And the garden vegetables and all of its produce will go to feed the families and the community of that school, because it is also a food desert, meaning that you have to walk a mile or more to get fresh produce, and the limited amount of fresh produce within that mile walk is substantial, meaning that you might have an apple or a banana, you might have one other type of fruit or vegetable, but that's about it. And usually it's corner stores, no major supermarkets, and nothing affordable for the community. So this will be fresh, free produce that they can multi-generationally raise on their own school's campus to be able to provide for the community and connect better with their school. That's the hope. So we're building that right now, and that's what some of this money will help to go towards, because FUMCOG and the Julian Morgan Fund have provided us generous support for a number of years, and I'm using some of it for that. And then this DEP money will be the education and outreach and connection element, which will bring that community into the school, the garden, and future plantings, because I don't think we're done planting trees there. And as Mark knows, there's no lack of space or need for street trees. So I'm hoping, God willing, that in the fall or next year, we can also then start hitting street trees or yard trees across that neighborhood and that community as well.
That'll be great. We'll be building it within the grant funding. There's also funds for rain barrel workshops and composting bin workshops. So we'll be trying to get folks to build them for either the school site in the Juniata Park case, or in FUMCOG's case for your site there, and possibly for people who attend on their own sites, so that we kind of pay it forward as well. So we keep it in the larger community locations, but we encourage people to take them home and do that kind of gardening and rain barrel stormwater collection and waste reduction in their homes. So as part of the workshops, in addition to the gardening, we'll be looking at energy, water, and waste conservation as
Kathy,
well.
and David, something to look at is collaboration with the Philadelphia Water Department. They have a major program they're trying to minimize stormwater runoff, and so they have programs for rain gardens and free rain barrels, and consulting and advice on how to minimize your runoff and reduce your water bill by eliminating impervious surfaces on your home or your neighborhood. So
It'd be great if we could incorporate them. Yeah, if you have some contacts there, Bill, that'd be great. Love to reach out to them.
I've gone to a couple of their workshops, partly just thinking about what I could do around my own home. But you could probably find it just on the Philadelphia Water Department website. but I
It's
can also look
green,
there and see if I
Green
can find
Streets.
some.
Yeah, yeah. Is it green? Is it called Green Streets? I think that's the name of the program.
Well, I know
Uh,
that might be part of it. I know
mhm,
they're doing things to try to minimize runoff
mhm.
into street drains because
Yeah,
in a lot of part of the city, the storm drains combine with the sanitary sewers.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely reach out to them because we can invite guest speakers. It doesn't have to be all PA IPL speakers. We really are encouraged by the DEP to work with existing literature and existing programs. And if they have funding that we can take advantage of to extend our reach even further, invite more participants, build more rain barrels. Uh, Rain gardens are a little bit tougher to do on private sites because that's an expensive proposition. We're not going to
Yeah.
have funding for rain gardens, but on a site like Fumcog or Juniata Park, we might be able to supplement what we're doing with additional funding. So that's part of what I do as well. Is I'm always searching for complementary grants so that we might not be reinventing the wheel every time we receive a grant, but we can keep pushing our programs to expand further, reach more people, reach more neighborhoods, and improve our impact, increase our impact.
And you could see that also, like, obviously if you take the lead on it as like you have a school and you have an idea and you have a thing, the grant can actually pay for the organizers to do the day-to-day work. So like
Mhm.
you can be the idea person and the administrator that helps us connect, but we can also then hire in capacity if the grant allows for it. And I think that's a lot of
Mhm.
what we did this year was hire in capacity because we literally can't be everywhere and we don't have enough hours to do all of this work. But I also think that the hope is that that hired in capacity leads us to the volunteer and community connections that are
Mhm.
actually going to sustain this. You know, this
Yeah.
is a 1 year grant, as is the Julia Morgan Fund funding that we get every year potentially, and we need that community in Juniata Park to be invested in this so that they see the value in it, and then they can
Mhm.
continue it, and we can continue to be there as long as we can possibly be, but we still don't have the manpower. I can't be at Juniata Park every week, you know, but and the school's closed over the summer, so the faculty and staff can't do it either. They
Mhm.
need families, you know, and I think
Yeah.
families are a way that we can build this movement. And the education component of this is also important, right? Like not just adults learning how to improve their house, but also children learning how to navigate this world.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we want this to be regenerative. It will be focusing particularly on children and families because if children can coerce their parents into buying them something like Cocoa Puffs or Frosted Flakes, then they can coerce them into healthy habits and a healthy lifestyle as well. And that's just our way of paying it forward and building a regenerative program, which, as David is saying, will continue long after we're gone. So
David,
that's the plan.
at Juniata Park, is there a water source? Is there a tap that could be used for keeping things alive if we get a dry spell?
Yeah, that the principal has been very generous with that, and I don't think it's a problem at the moment. There's also houses within close proximity to the garden and the trees. So like if I can
Mhm.
get literally the like streets right around it, we could also tap into somebody's house water. But the I don't think that the principal has any problem with us utilizing the school's water resources. There's just not any tap at the garden itself, but it's not far from it.
Kathy, I had
Mhm.
a question. If I think you remember when uh, you were working with, I was working with you and John Riggin on this, that things seem pretty fuzzy to me how this would come together. And I guess it still seems that way, but hearing David talk, it reminds me that John, because he works with this kind of stuff all the time, it's sort of what he does. Um,
Mhm.
the two of you were clear that what we were already doing sort of had us had a jump start on it. So David was kind of reminding me, like we had some, I thought we were setbacks, and then we've just sort of leap forward with a lot of success working with Pickett School and a particular class of special needs students on the spectrum. And we had a very successful planting day on April 22nd, and kids were energized, and we had a drumming music group that was out there, and it was really special. And the teacher was very energized and is very interested in doing more work. And they're going to be taking watching the tree tenders training videos, and hopefully following up. We'll be doing some tree pit maintenance. So
Yeah.
that's all moving forward. And then we got FUMCOG and Weaver's Way Co-op gave some small chunks of money to developing a pollinator garden and some more raised beds in the backyard at FUMCOG in conjunction with the daycare center. I made a connection with one of the teachers there. So these are all preschool kids that she's working with, and she's enthusiastic about learning about gardening. So this is all good stuff that's happening. And I guess saying all that is like, is that something that we coalesces, it fits into what we're creating here?
Yes, let me see if I can create a new share. This doesn't always work for me, but let me see if this works. So here's, let me try this one. Are you seeing a little bit a
Okay.
different
Detailed
screen here?
project.
Yeah, so these are more of our detailed project descriptions. So as you can see here, we have a month by month plan for what we're going to be doing in each location. So as soon as we execute the grant agreement and we take on our fellows, we are going to begin planning in the month of July. And then we're going to work with you and Juniata Park to set up some dates and locations for workshops. We were starting to think about August as the theme would be creation, care, and environmental justice. And our workshop one would really be introducing attendees to creation care and how it relates to conservation, climate change, environmental justice, and them. And how, so we're going to be really covering a lot in this first session, but most importantly, we're going to be listening to them as well. So we want to make sure that we understand what attendees need, what they think they need, so that we make sure we provide for their needs in future workshops. And we're going to probably conduct a soil testing workshop here for blueberry shrub planting in the spring, because this will, this is for southwestern PA, but the same applies for southeastern PA. Let me switch over to that one. It's the same. Here we go. So we're still going to be looking at blueberry shrubs in spring 2023. So we will be purchasing soil testing kits from the Penn State Extension, 50 native trees, 50 blueberry shrubs, shovels, and tree tubes. So we have a plan in place. So maybe this is what you were referring to, Mark, when you were talking about a structure. And we hope to tie back in the spiritual portion of it and make this first event kind of fun by hosting a cosmic walk during this workshop. And then we will be assessing at each workshop. We'll be trying to collect the names and contact information, get their permission to contact the attendees, and then list their needs, questions, and experiences, so we can create a storytelling document that they'll be able to share their experiences. We'll be able to share ours. And after all of the workshops, we will be presenting this information at a statewide Environmental Educators Association conference next March. So that's part of the grant requirement. And so we have to do that for our own benefit and for the benefit of others. So we'll be learning from the teachers that we work with, and we'll also be attempting to teach the teachers what our experiences were as part of this process. And then in September, we'll move into waste conservation. We'll be building, sorry, got a little too fast there. We'll be building, I'm sorry, yes, September. There it is. Oh, yeah, there's September. We'll be building compost bins in September. So we'll be getting families involved. They'll be really rolling up their sleeves, we hope. And so if you have students that are special needs students and could participate in this, I think it would be a wonderful way to get them involved in working with the land and on projects. So we'll have to talk about that offline in more detail. Then we'll move into water conservation in October, where we'll work on rain barrel construction, and then energy conservation in November as we get into the cold weather and ways that they can conserve energy in their home, keep themselves a little warmer over the winter months. So there's purchased equipment for all of these workshops. And then in December, we'll have a holiday celebration. There's so many holidays in the December month. We'll try to celebrate that. And we'll plan again as a group for the next workshops, 5 through 7. And then we'll start in the spring with more spring planting and organics and health. And we'll be looking to build maybe even as much as cold frames so tender crops can be started earlier in the season. And with organics and health, we'll really be looking at seeds and organic materials and demonstrating farming techniques and composting techniques. And we'll hope to host a second compost bin workshop because we hope we'll be attracting more people as we move through the process. And then in May, sorry, my mouse is very sensitive. In May, we'll get into tree and blueberry shrub planting because that will be where we are about now. And then in we'll be purchasing more plants and getting more plants from Chesapeake Bay, et cetera. And then we'll be planning a summer solstice celebration in June. And that's when we'll be wrapping up for the DEP. But we'll have a final celebration as well. And that's when we'll be wrapping up and writing our final report. But we don't want this to end, as David was saying. We want this to continue long after this particular grant. So if we educate the families and friends here, we hope that they'll be paying it forward to all their families and friends, and that will just continue to grow, be a little movement within these particular areas. And then if we receive the grants in years 2 and 3, we'll be able to reach out to additional communities in the same way. So as David was saying, once we have these workshops in place and they're even recorded, it's going to be very simple for other of our PA IPL congregational members of any type to work with us on these, so we can bring them to your community, or you can bring them to your community almost free of charge. But we would need to purchase, we'd need to find funding to purchase all the materials that we need for the workshops. So we'd love to work with you to keep expanding over time, if not through DEP grants, but through other grants that we have coming up. Did that help, Mark?
Yeah, a little bit. I was unable to read that because of
Sorry. Yeah.
any chance you can send that to me just so I could.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah. And we'll have to make sure that these plans through the listening sessions and planning like the first 4 workshops at one time, then we'll regroup and plan the next 5 through 7, because we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves in the planning process, because things change as you move forward and you grow and your knowledge of the community. So let me try to move back to my other share.
Kathy, it sounds very exciting.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
And
There we
I
go.
think there's opportunities for, getting some other of our people who are local IPL people. If we can have some advance notice on when you're going to be doing planting or when you're going to be doing a workshop, I think we, would probably have other people who'd like to either help out or be supportive.
That would be fabulous. Having volunteers there to help out would be fabulous, and lend their expertise. So if anyone wants to contribute their knowledge about energy, water, waste, stormwater, composting, organic gardening, tree planting, shrub planting, any kind of expertise, we're more than happy to work together with them. And this I threw this slide in there. This was an example of a smaller grant. This comes through.
We're still seeing your old share.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Might have to stop. Okay, let me start over again. There we go. Are we back on the slide?
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
yes.
good, good, good. I can't get enough of these colorful paintings. I just love these gardens. This is back to Ballfield Farm in southwestern PA, but the reason I wanted to talk about this with all of you in Philly is because we could work together on a similar project like this, a similar grant like this, which it was up to $10,000 from Duquesne Light Company, which is our local power supplier, but you have Pico and probably others out in your area. We could work with them as well. We received 5,000 out of the 10, and that helped to fund some of the infrastructure that's required at Ballfield Farm to keep them rolling into the future. You can see they've been funded for solar panels in the past. These solar panels that they have pump water to their garden area, and they receive funding for their tent structure, their tubular tent structure. We're part of this Duquesne Light grant is going to help them repair parts of the tunnel, the mile-long tunnel that they have, and purchase bird houses and bat houses and small implements for gardening so that children and families can continue to garden here. So I'm always looking for grants like these. They're usually easy to apply for, so we don't want to miss them. They usually are a one-page application, and we want to make sure that we include urban farms and neighborhoods like Juniata Park and Fumcog and the Pickett School. We talked to Chester East Side. Unfortunately, they had a leadership change, so we may be able to work with them in the future and in the Philadelphia area. And then areas in Lancaster and State College and Scranton, Northeast PA. I hope we can work together there. Another one we've worked with is the Pittsburgh Blueberry Project. So these are just some photos of trees, blueberry shrubs that were planted over Earth Week. They planted 1,000 berries in a week. I know in Central PA and Southeastern PA, we have some veteran planters as well. 1,000 shrubs to you probably sounds like a drop in the bucket. But to me, it sounded like a tremendous feat. So this all occurred on Earth Day and around Earth Day this year. We received some help from PA IPL and the Isaac Walton League to buy these shrubs. And then one of our local partners, the Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh, it's the first Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh in the area that we call Shady Side, took up a special collection in the holiday season for us, and they collected an additional $550 for PA IPL to use towards the blueberries. And they're actually volunteering, as Bill was saying, we're volunteering to plant some of these shrubs. So it's working out well for everybody involved. So I think these are great ways that we can continue, and whether it's $50,000 or $500, we're always looking to make your projects and our projects a reality. So if you think of anything like this, we need a little advance notice. Most of these projects require most of these proposals for grants require shovel-ready projects. So you have to be almost ready to go whenever you submit the proposal. But if we just keep building them and they're all in our back pocket, then whenever the appropriate grant comes along, we'll just be ready to apply right there. And we can modify some of these applications as well. So the one that monthly workshops that we were just talking about in relation to the environmental education program grant, we can shuffle those around depending on the grant period. So it just makes so much more sense to me for them to start in the spring. But this one started really in August, so we had to really redo our thinking when we put that proposal together. But ideally, it would be great to start in February and March, and if you're working on garden projects, and then wind up in the fall or winter. But we have to work with what we have. So just keep our options open, keep thinking, and let me know if there's anything else that you know of that you want to work on with us. And don't forget about the bike and hike. We want to keep journeying with you towards our cleaner future. There's still time to register if you want to be a biker or a hiker. You can still sponsor a biker or a hiker. You can sponsor the Philadelphia route itself. You can sponsor the entire bike and hike itself. And you can certainly participate with us in our advocacy days. Right now we have Thursday, the 19th of May from 5 to 6 planned, and Friday, 5:20 from noon to 1 planned. And if you go to the website, you'll be able to find the particulars about our areas of interest for the advocacy days, and the templates and letter writing, calling, emailing that we're going to do, and what's going to actually happen on those specific days. And that kind of winds up everything that I was going to talk about tonight, but I'm sure David and I will be happy to take questions from you.
So I would really sincerely like to try to get something. I mean, we obviously, Mark already is doing lots of planting in Philadelphia, and I think we could do more, something like the Blueberry Project. But that garden grant, I mean, they exist and we can get them. So like I said in the chat, I know probably half a dozen farms that would take that money from us very easily, and that would just expand their work. And in expanding their work, hopefully we can mobilize other faith people in our congregations and in our community to go and do that work with them. And Tim, I don't know if you heard all about Juniata Park earlier, but I'm gonna pull you down into the city one day to help me with them. I need some people who want to do some children's education, because I did 300 on Earth Day and it was pretty exhausting and I got sunburned. I need to bring a sun hat next time.
Yeah, you got my email, right?
Yeah, I'll directly email you next time, because I needed you there with me.
I'm sorry I'm late. I got into a book and just got lost.
It's a good place to get lost.
It's a climate book. It's a climate book.
Yeah, Tim came in late, but we are recording the meeting, so we can get you that afterwards to hear about all the good work that's going on. I was curious, Kathy, about the Duquesne Light grant. Did they actually pay for putting in a water well, or how did they support getting water for the farm?
Our Duquesne Light Community Impact Grant did not pay for the pump. That was a past project that had been funded by another entity. As part of the Duquesne Light grant, we're funding primarily the tunnel repair that's required, quite a bit of the tools and equipment that they need, some fencing that they need to keep wildlife and vandals out, and some seating areas for the farm. We're increasing biodiversity on the site with two bat houses, bird houses, and some beehives, particularly the carpenter bees that work in the little cells, not a traditional honey beehive. So the $5,000 didn't go quite as far as we wanted it to. We were hoping to get the 10. So in that particular case, the remainder of that 10 was going to be used, the extra 5 was going to be used to try to educate what we were calling ambassadors, community ambassadors, pay them a little stipend, make them our outreach folks within the community. So they would have been high school students or college students within the community that we would have educated along the way, and then we would release them into the wild, so to speak, and ask them to spread the message for us. As a sideline, we have something else going on at that farm that I haven't been able to follow up on. So I hope I have some time now that the bike and hike is launched. Uh, we're going to be installing air quality monitors through a Carnegie Mellon program on the top of an organization called the Pittsburgh Project, which is adjacent to Ballfield Farm. So I need to get that going again. But a small portion of that, the cost of that was what it really costs, what it costs to power a 40-watt incandescent lamp for a year. That's essentially, it's just about $150. So we were going to take part of that out of that extra $5,000 that we didn't get. So the Pittsburgh Project agreed to just go ahead and pay for that. So we need to get that going. So I know that Drexel out in your area does some air quality testing. So if we know of any organizations that are interested in installing air quality monitoring, we could push a little bit on that as well.
One of our real active members, Peter Winslow, is working, I think, with Drexel and with the Clean Air Council on some air quality monitoring.
Yes, we were
Yeah,
going to apply for a grant with him. That was the US EPA grant. Do you know if they followed through, Peter Winslow?
I know that Drexel and Clean Air Council got some money, whether it was that EPA grant or something else, I don't know.
I don't know what they wound up getting, but he at least had me write a letter of support for them, so.
Yeah, we really wanted to work with him. He came to us a week before the EPA grant was due, and it was just too big of a lift at the time.
Yeah, to get something done that quickly, I understand
Well,
that.
especially that an EPA grant is, the forms are unfathomable.
Massive. Yeah.
They make the DEP look like a breeze. We love them. We want to work with them. But it's not something you can plan in a week.
Yeah.
Can I ask a dumb question?
There are no dumb questions.
You talked about this mile-long tunnel. What?
Well, it's not actually a mile long, but it's
What in the world? Why are you
it's probably
building a
100
tunnel out on
yards.
the farm?
It's 100 yards. I should call it the 100-yard tunnel.
What's it for? What do you do with it?
Oh, it's like an enormous cold frame. So it allows them to start crops earlier and grow crops later in the season, have maybe some plants that might not grow in the native Pennsylvania climate, that sort of thing. So it's a big, huge series, kind of a Quonset hut sort of thing made out of.
Oh, it's not
series of
underground then, right?
No.
Oh,
let me-
okay.
Are you talking
I
about
were
the
doing
hoop
a
house that I
coal
saw?
tunnel or something underground. I thought, what in the world?
Kathy, is it
Yeah.
the hoop house that I saw?
The hoop house, thank
Yeah,
you.
it's
Yes.
a hoop house. Yeah.
Okay, I know what those are for.
Yeah.
That's
It is quite big though, I will admit that. But
Yeah. So
I
this
was
grant
thinking-
did actually help.
For Juniata Park, something like that might allow you to maybe even get a fall crop of lettuce or green beans going that, stuff that'll grow in cold weather. You could, especially if you had a cold frame or, some plastic hoops to protect it into November or even December.
yeah. I mean, the one unfortunate thing is that the Julia Morgan Fund money that is earmarked has been very useful in starting, and then the remaining education grant has to be for education and presentation and stuff like that. So it can't be like buying a lot of materials out of things. But I think that this is the first year in getting it started. So if we can establish the garden and establish the community and establish everything that we need to, we can demonstrate to the next year's grantors and say, look what we're already doing with so little. Please help us create all of this other stuff. They have currently 8 raised beds already built, like in the ground. They're just not kept, And I'm also, I feel like I'm gonna get a little pushback from that one faculty member wants to put marigolds in, but it's like 20 marigolds in this huge raised bed, and then he like covered it with the artificial tarp because he doesn't want to weed it all the time. But like that's cute, but it's not really very very important. And I'm sorry, but and also like you
Is he a
the
science
25 trees that
teacher?
I put in are going to be a more substantial pollinator than the 12 or so marigolds that he stuck in the ground. So I don't, but we'll see.
Is he a science teacher?
No, I forget. The principal told me that he has some background in gardening, but I'm pretty sure he's not a science teacher because I asked that same question. But all the other teachers were very interested, and none of them have ever dug a hole before or planted a plant or things like that. So it was as much an education for them and the principal as it was for the children. And we also made animals and little like earth ceramics out of salt flour clay, which is basically just salt, water, and flour and food dye. But it was a great activity to like connect them to what we were doing, and a lot of them made trees, and that now they have these little art pieces for their house. And every one of the classrooms, the 10 to 15 classrooms that I met on Earth Day, they're all growing plants in their classrooms right now. Squash and tomatoes and cucumbers and everything that you can imagine that I picked up from the local grocery store and brought to their campus. So we literally took the seeds out of the plants in front of them and planted them into cups of soil, which we used recycled cups from their lunches. So they had used them to eat out of, and then I said, don't throw them out, collect them. And then they brought them to me. We put a little soil in, and now they all have plants. And every day they check them and water them and measure them and stuff like that. So the kids are getting a kick out of it.
Oh, wonderful.
You could transplant those to the raised beds.
That's the hope, yeah. The only problem was that a lot of the kids wanted apples, and I'm not going to plant apple trees in a raised bed. But hi, Rita. By the way, sorry, you came in later. So I mean, I think that the one thing that I'm hoping for the Philadelphia chapter, and I think that probably everybody on this call would be on board with, is just trying to figure out more ways that we can reach out to more congregations and bring more people into this work. I mean, clearly there's a lot of stuff that we're doing. I also was talking with one of my interns the other day that the Philadelphia School District, 240,000 students, don't recycle every day. And I went through their trash at Juniata Park, and at least a third of their trash isn't even possible to be recycled, meaning that it's the types of plastics and glass that Philadelphia doesn't recycle. They were 3s, 4s, and 7s. So I would love long term for us to maybe think of ways in which we could mobilize in the school district of Philadelphia to have an actual recycling program for the largest number of people who have to attend school and have to eat lunch at school, and that we're providing them with plastic and glass things that then we're throwing directly into the trash. So that's just another thing that I would love to figure out for Philadelphia if we can down the road.
I'd be glad to listen in or help with that, because I
Awesome.
go hiking at the football field, the high school football field close by, and they don't recycle at all,
Yeah.
all. Everything goes into basic trash bins that are picked up, dumped in huge bins, and just the city waste management, I think, comes and just picks up everything. Nothing gets divided. So what I found, I bring back home and I recycle here.
The principal at Juniata Park didn't even know. She said she didn't know there weren't recycling bins in the cafeteria.
Interesting.
So I
Guess
think
she never
probably
goes
most
down,
schools just don't have the bandwidth or the thought, or
Well, listen, I want to thank both, unless other people have other questions, I want to really thank Kathy and David for sharing this information on what PA IPL is doing both statewide and locally. And for Rita and Tim, who came in late, most of our meeting got recorded, and I think Kathy will be converting that to something that is, or someone will be converting that to something that people can look at. So you'll certainly be welcome. When I hear it's available, I'll let both of you know. I have both your email addresses.
Well, thanks a lot, and I appreciate being forgiven for being late. But I did get that book pretty much read.
Good.
By the way, I recommend it.
Climate,
By
who's the
Charles
climate?
Eisenstein.
Climate,
A New Story. Yeah, it's pretty
We
good.
start a book club.
Pardon me?
We always start a book club.
Yeah, how about that? That'd be a good idea. Why don't we do it?
I
Wasn't that
just got
something, Bill, that
this.
you wanted? There you go.
I just got this. Revolutionary Power.
What's it about? Revolutions?
It's about, well, it's by a woman who's an attorney who is also, comes from a what you would, I guess, call an environmental justice background. And she's proposed, I've just started it. She's proposing pretty radical restructuring of the whole energy, the electrical energy system.
Mm.
And, it might also be a good one for a book club reading.
Yeah, Eisenstein has got a perspective about the climate problem that reduces the importance of science in it and says that what we really need to do is connect with one another and with nature in a much more embracing way, rather than just trying to break it apart into facts that we can use to make stories out of it. It needs to be a much more what I would regard as a spiritual type of thing, and that is much more connected, much more embracing of one another and of animals and of plants and of insects and of everything that lives in our nature and on our planet. He refers very often he refers to the earth as a Gaia environment, and that indicates basically that he believes the earth is alive and that it has a certain consciousness. And I think behind that would be a spiritual concept. Anyway, it's difficult to read. I recommend it, but I think that it's very challenging to read, and I'm going to probably have to read it 2 or 3 times before I understand much of it. Well, what I've gotten out of it so far has been pretty good.
Great. Well, it's almost 8:30. I appreciate everybody's patience hanging in with us. It looks like Doug had to leave, but thanks for those who are here. Thank you for being here. Kathy and David, thank you so much for the work you're doing and the presentation this evening.